I think that we all, whether we're women or not, but especially women, it's really trusting ourselves and learning to trust ourselves and learning to go within and develop that inner resilience to be able to hold steady in the world and to hold steady through whatever is happening in the world. And I think we can all agree this is a really difficult time. It's a profound time of change, which will hopefully lead to greater equality, greater awareness, greater consciousness. And I think that's what we're all holding space for.
Hello, welcome to Women Awakening, and I'm your host, Cynthia James. And, I feel so honored to create space where powerful women from around the globe get to step forward to bring their courage, their wisdom, their dedication, and their service to uplifting the well-being of women everywhere. I work with leaders and teams, and I train coaches in my emotional integration techniques. And then I support individuals who are ready to up-level and thrive. At the end of the show, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But I believe that we're living in a time of powerful feminine emergence, where women's voices and their visions and leadership are rising in powerful ways. And so I can't even tell you how deeply grateful I am to be a conduit, to introduce you to these remarkable change makers and their stories of transformation, resilience, and impact. You can find Women Awakening with Cynthia James on every podcast platform and video on YouTube. Please share these conversations, subscribe, and leave a review. I want you to know your reviews truly make a difference in helping us reach more women around the world. You can also connect with me through my website, cynthiajames.net. I have a newsletter, a vibrant private community, and many offerings to support your fullest expression in this world. Now, I want to introduce you to my guest. Her name is Laura Chandler, and she's a writer, a teacher, a podcast host, an award-winning songwriter. She has worked in publishing, music, and video production, and alternative therapies. As the co-founder and executive director of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, a school for consciousness studies in Berkeley, she's dedicated to preservation of traditions and practices that contribute to the healing of the earth and the awakening of humanity to more compassionate existence. Her music has appeared in film and television, and she is the owner of Red Cow Records and Music Publishing. She has a background in spiritual, therapeutic, and meditative techniques from around the world. And she's worked with master teachers from various traditions. Laura, I am so grateful that you are here.
I'm so grateful you're here, Cynthia. It's so lovely to be on your show and to see you again.
Well, thank you. So everybody, we met at a conference, and it was quite beautiful to be in Laura's presence as she brought such healing energy. I want to know where you grew up, how you grew up.
Where and how I grew up. Well, I started out in Atlanta, Georgia, and we sort of before Atlanta was really the city that it is today, it was sort of just a big town back then. We moved around with my dad's job. So we moved to the Northeast, and I lived in New Jersey for a while and Connecticut in a while. But I would say how I grew up, I think that I was always attuned to the spiritual side of things, and without even really fully understanding it, and kind of coming into really learning about it primarily on my own. We had a strong early, Baptist Methodist background, but then, things shifted as we shifted, and I learned to identify my spiritual connection in my own way. And so that's really what I do now, is help people connected to their inner wisdom and to better understand, what their experience is in their own terms.
Yeah. So where did music come in?
Oh, well, in those terms, when I went to college, I double majored in psychology and English literature, and I was sure I would be an English professor and a poet. And so that's how I started out. I've had some poems published, and I was on that PhD route after college. And I will back that up and say I had an amazing advisor in college who was a humanistic professor who had studied with Abraham Maslow. And I did not know until much later on in my life what a remarkable gift that was, because humanistic psychology it's a thing, but it was not the way that psychology went. Psychology went into sort of more clinical trials and testing on monkeys and things like that. And humanistic psychology is just amazing. And I was really fortunate that I had him as an advisor. But I went on to, I was also a musician and self-taught and singer-songwriter, and I was doing music on the side, and I was studying, for my master's program. And then my music career took off surprisingly. Maybe not surprisingly, but I had to kind of make a choice there. And I thought, okay, I can come back to writing. I'm going to follow this. And so I had a really wonderful time in the music industry, a wonderful career, had some songs on the radio, and got to play with some really big names who people would recognize, unlike my name probably, unless you're in certain regions where you might have heard of me. And then, I had an experience, very difficult loss in my life, which really took kind of music from me. It didn't take it from me, but I lost that it left in a particular way. It left. But what it left me with, the joy of that, like wanting to write and perform and all of that, what it left me with was a very strong spiritual path. And of course, music now is come back, and I still connect to, I still have fingers in pots of, working with friends and different things. But it really set me firmly on this path of co-creating the foundation of the sacred stream with Lisa Gucciardi, and the work I do in depth hypnosis, and the work I do in just consciousness work. So I hope that's helpful.
That's so beautiful. So I'm a singer-songwriter too, and it's very interesting to me because nobody could have ever told me I'd have been a singer-songwriter. I mean, I sang when I was in high school, but it wasn't until later I started getting downloads of music, not even understanding what was being given to me. And so I want to say that I'm really grateful that music is still a part of who you are, because I really feel like music is a healing salve. And I feel like some people say that music is like praying twice. There's the spoken word and the music. So you're a podcast host too. I mean, you have a lot. When I was looking at your bio, I was like, well, she does this and then she does this. So, so where does the podcasting come in for you?
Well, I started the podcast in 2017, and oddly, way before there were really podcasts, I wanted to do something that was similar to podcasting, and I wanted to call it Go Girl. And I wanted to interview women, much like you do, just interview women and talk about their path, And I didn't do that. But in 2017, I, decided I had time to do the podcast, and I'd like to do a podcast because I'm so fortunate in my life and my work to meet so many really inspiring people. And some of them are very well known, and some of them are not well known, but their stories are magnificent. Not that it has to be well known to be important. It's just the inspiring stories that we have to share, and about being human, really. And so that was the motivation. It was really, a labor of love for me. I often say, I wish I had more time to do more episodes. And my producer's always like, you really need to do more episodes. I'm like, okay, but I've really got to run this organization, and I've really got to teach. And so it's a balancing act. But that's the impetus for the podcast.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful to see when I decided to start this, I had no idea what I didn't know. So that was quite a journey. I want to talk to you about why is it important for us to understand ancient wisdom?
Well, I think, what we refer to as ancient wisdom, are these often they're indigenous, nature-based things coming from nature, or wisdom that's coming from nature, or wisdom that's coming from, just understandings that have been around for a very, very long time. And what's happened in our current culture, and I think we're shifting away from that. I like to think that I'm part of that shift, and we're all part of that shift, is we become very focused on the scientific, which is so important. The scientific has so much to add, but when we get too narrow in the data or too narrow in the empirical, like proof of something, there are other sciences that would suggest that your experience is actually evidence of some things, but that can't always fit into an empirical thing. So what we're seeing more and more now is as we map the brain more, as we do more study in energy and the way energy operates and different healing modalities, compassion studies, studies on meditation and mindfulness, we're finding that we're more than what the sum of our parts. We're more than what we just see or touch or taste or feel. There's something larger to us. And I think that for me, that one of the gateways, not the only gateway, but ancient wisdom holds the idea that there's something more. So across cultures, across spiritual traditions, is this opening to perceiving more that exists in the unseen, and this larger aspect of consciousness that we're all connected to and that we're all connected by.
Yeah. So, from my perspective, I'm watching science, spirituality, psychology intersect. I mean, when I was speaking with Isa, we were talking about the depth hypnosis. What do you think about what's going on today? And do you think it's a good thing for us?
I think it is. I mean, I think that there are different things that maybe aren't fully hatched, or, like they're different, they're different. You got to have a good teacher. You have to have a good study. You have to have a good, things coming together. But I think that this is the natural progression of an evolution that we're experiencing. And as we open to more of who we are, the more we'll be able to live a happier and more full life, and address and have the tools to address the things that are difficult. Right now we do a lot of denial, we do a lot of distracting, and that's because we don't always have the tools to navigate difficult emotions and these aspects of the self that we've been sort of taught to quiet and ignore, right? So I think that has shifted quite a lot. And I've seen really in the last 20 years or less, the idea of mind, body, spirit being, reconnected, that is absolutely part of, the zeitgeist now. I don't think that's not unusual. Whereas 20 years ago, people were like, I'm not so sure about chiropractic or, acupuncture, and now, or mind, body, spirit. I would just also say, this idea of spirituality, right? Like, what does that mean? And it means different things for different people. And for some people, who are maybe materialist oriented, scientific materialist oriented, they might say, oh, that's woo-woo. But what I would like to see is a reclaiming of the idea that we have a spirit that needs to be tended, and that's part of our spiritual path. So it doesn't have to have all of the trappings of like, what is your spiritual practice, or, that it's only for people who believe in a certain thing. It's just, when you're not feeling well, when you're down, or when, the world feels too much, there's something in you more than just, your hormonal shifts, your chemical, your brain firings, there's a spirit that needs tending, among other things. Right.
Yeah, that was so beautifully stated. And I guess that I want to say to anybody listening, how you tend to your spirit is different for everyone. But it seems to me that the quest to learn how to tend to your spirit is one of the greatest gifts of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And it's part of our path as humans. It's part of the human path. It may be walks in nature, It may just be spending time at the beach with your dog, Or it may be going on retreats and doing deep meditational exercises and that kind of thing. But you know what works for you, and that's the important thing, is arriving at that on your own. I mean, with help, you can have assistance, but I mean, being able to decide for yourself, like, this really works for me,
Yeah. So you're a teacher, you're a healer, you're an executive. What do you do to take care of yourself and tend your spirit?
That's a great question. Well, I do have a regular reflection practice. So I do that daily, whether it's part meditation and part what we call journey work or insight meditation. And I try my best, not always perfectly, to, do things that I love, to make time for the things that I love. I don't always have that time. I don't always have that luxury, and I, like many people, especially women, can sometimes say, oh, I got to do this and this and this and this before I get to that. But, I'm still learning, but I do try to make that a priority. And, but I would say, that having a reflection practice, a contemplative practice, a meditation practice of some kind, again, for me, it's meditation. It helps me. It gives me bandwidth. It helps me be more resilient and not just tossed around by the kind of external forces, at play, like media, or, that guy that just cut me off in traffic, or something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you said that. I mean, I have a spiritual practice and I have a list called non-negotiables, and that's on my list. It's like my spiritual practice is a non-negotiable. I mean, it has to happen. Otherwise, I'm a little cranky. So I want to stay present and tend my spirit. I want to know, how do people find you and your work?
Oh, well, I have a website, laurachandler.org, and you can reach me there. And you can also find me on the Sacred Stream website, sacredstream.org. And that's like holy water, but Sacred Stream. And that has all of our classes and events and articles and videos, and we have a lot of free resources, and we have regular community events that, like drum circles and some meditation groups and crystal bowl sound healing meditations that can be done on online and in person at the Sacred Stream Center in Berkeley.
Well, that's beautiful. And I just want to say, anybody who is in that area, I would go visit them, because being in their presence and experiencing some of the rituals there is quite a beautiful, transformative experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked the same last question of everybody on this show. This show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening at this moment?
First, I just want to say, when you were talking about what you do with the podcast in the opening, I was reminded of one of my heroes, Maya Angelou, who I got to see give a talk back in the 1990s. And actually, I got to see her twice. She was at my son's, she did the commencement speech at my son's graduation. But I saw her and she said, all the great beings are incarnating now as women. Which I thought, wow, Maya Angelou just said that. That was amazing. So that's something to think about. For women awakening, I think that we all, whether we're women or not, but especially women, it's really trusting ourselves and learning to trust ourselves and learning to go within and develop that inner resilience to be able to hold steady in the world and to hold steady through whatever is happening in the world. And I think we can all agree this is a really difficult time. It's a profound time of change, which will, hopefully lead to greater equality, greater awareness, greater consciousness. And I think that's what we're all holding space for. But for women especially, really leaning into their strengths and learning what those strengths are and really stepping into power. We hear a lot about that, stepping into one's power. But one of the ways to understand that is that we're always cultivating an ability to hold more power, not power over, but our own internal power. And when we do that, again, we're like a big tree that's not easily blown over. We can really hold steady and listen to our inner voice. And you do that by developing an internal, a contemplative practice, like you said, a spiritual practice, where you're not tossed about by the external expectations and projections, right? And you learn to know the difference. So I think that's a really important skill and a really important resource for women awakening.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for being here. I'm such a fan of yours and the work that you do, and it was such an honor to be in your presence. I really thank you for being here so that my ladies could meet you as well.
Well, it's such an honor. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be with you, Cynthia. And I look forward to being with you again.
Me too.
Okay.
Okay, ladies, I hope that you really took in not just the conversation, but Laura's sweet spirit and the consciousness in which she spoke. I hope you walk away feeling touched and encouraged and reminded of how powerful you are and how much power lives in each and every one of us. These interviews are here because I want to support you in awakening your own voice and connecting to your own visions and your unique gifts in this world. I told you earlier that I do emotional integration. And so if you want to go deeper, you can go to my website, cynthiajames.net. And in January, I'm going to be training new coaches. Just explore what that looks like. I want to invite you to please remember to subscribe. Share these episodes with the women in your life and leave a review because it really makes a difference. I want you to know that you can see us on video at YouTube, Women Awakening with Cynthia James. And until the next time that we get together, please continue to remember how incredible you are, that this is your time to rise, to shine, and to awaken to the fullness of who you are. I'm grateful to be with you. I love you, and I'll see you soon.